It's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Kunkel, I'm so glad that you're here. I got to be honest with you. I am, this is a little bit of a selfish podcast episode for me because I am so excited to be able to pick your brain.
That's probably the
and
perfect context to do it under.
And for anybody listening, I feel like I want to give you a little bit of an introduction. I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'm going to do the best I can.
Yeah, man.
You are a 2-time USA Ultra Running Champion. I'm going to call you the ultimate biohacker, which is a whole lot of what I'm excited to talk to you about.
That's pretty serious.
You're also, though, the 50-mile and 100K road national champion. You also run a really cool organization here in Durango called the Ultra House, which I'm excited to talk about that a little bit too. And then just recently, I think it was maybe last weekend or very recently, you first place in the Spartan Ultra. So hopefully tee up a little bit of who we're talking to and who we have the opportunity to, pick their brain. So before we dive in, I just want to thank you for that and giving me the opportunity to learn from you. And, you're somebody that I've followed on social media for a very long time. I've been in the running world for, I don't know. I mean, I ran Steamworks half marathon back in 2014 is probably when I started, and you're just smoking everybody. And, I kind of got some exposure from you in those early days of kind of our local, half marathons and the narrow gauge 10 miler and some of those races like that. But then very recently, probably in the last year, I would say, I've been on a little bit of a personal health journey, kind of trying to be the best version of myself. It's kind of the whole concept of the podcast is chasing greatness and, just these ways for us to be the best version we can be. And so your message has started to resonate with me in a much more powerful way, in probably the last year, and sort of your approach to training, your approach to nutrition, your approach to supplements, your approach to running, your approach to life. I mean, all of that stuff.
The interesting thing is I think a lot of people are in that boat.
Yeah.
I feel like I have had my lane and I have further rutted into that lane, and all of a sudden people are like, it's resonating with people. It never did. I was just some weird person doing some weird thing somewhere, and now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, man, I'd really like that. And people are like, I'm still doing it the same way that I always have. So it's the same proposition. Well, just show up at my house.
Right.
Well, I don't know about that. Or no, it's fine. Like, just do it. And so I'm still offering the same thing I've always offered, but suddenly it's resonating with people, and they're shocked typically that
it's
that
so
they can
interesting
just
that you say that, because I've wondered that if I have a different sphere of influence now, like if my algorithms have changed or if I'm associating with different people or whatever, has my perception on sort of, optimal life approaches changed, or has there actually been a shift in kind of overall perception and openness? It seems like maybe you've got a little bit of a pulse on that.
It's got to be bigger.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger than that, because I'm not riding any particular wave either. So it really, it's not like I have that much bigger of a reach, but it's resonating with more and more of the people.
That is
so
fascinating.
It really feels like the world is, they're just done with that bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like the great resignation or whatever, like everybody quiet quitting and stuff. It's like, I think we've talked about what people are ditching, but we haven't talked about where they're going. And a lot of people are, they're in kind of more in the, let's go to South America and do DMT, and a little less in the, let's build up our 401ks, it seems like.
Right.
So, yeah. It's fascinating, but I don't feel like I've changed at all. I think the world has just kind of caught on to what I'm doing.
They're catching up. Yeah. Well, and I totally get it too, because at least in my, my journey, and I'm a decade behind you, but you start to realize how good you can feel. For me, one of the biggest things I did is I stopped drinking alcohol, and it just catapulted every component of my life. And then I started to look at things with a different perspective of, okay, I want to feel that good all the time now. How can you start to get a little taste of what we're capable of, how good we can be, how good we can feel. And so I can totally see how that wave would sort of ride. I was curious, you said something kind of interesting that stood out to me. You were at, I'm going to butcher the name of it, but you were at a biohacking conference or convention.
Yeah, it was Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in Texas, last month.
And you mentioned something about the idea of being able to buy it back or something like that. Tell me more about that, of what you experienced.
Yeah, I had some deep philosophical morning pages, or just free flow, kind of like mindfulness, but writing and just letting thoughts kind of come out. I had some really deep conversations with myself while I was out there of one of the themes was living to 180. And I'm like, I don't want to live to 180, but I love life more than anyone that I know. So why don't I want more of it?
Yeah.
It's like, what is going on there? And just teasing apart these layers of trying to analyze the world and analyze myself. And I think ultimately I fell into the kind of Cus D'Amato, a guy that coached, I mean, a bunch of amazing boxers, but is known for coaching Tyson. And he was in the camp of, as long as you have a reason to live, you're going to keep living. And I kind of feel that way. I kind of feel I'm not here to run and then retire and then whatever, like have a cigarette on my porch and wait for the reaper. I'm really there's something bigger in there, and I kind of think that'll keep me alive as long as I'm this engaged. It feels like I'm very, very far from death right now.
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly what the limitations of that are, but it does seem like a lot of people they spend, you're not really cognizant of the world until you're, I don't know, 15, 25.
Right.
Like, you've no idea. You have no idea. And so by the time that you realize what's going on, you might have 25 to 30 years of working a career to realize that, 17-year-old you wasn't the best decision maker.
Right.
And you've been riding this decision out for your entire life.
Your frontal lobe wasn't even developed
yet.
Yeah,
you didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
And so, it seemed like a lot of these people were very, affluent people in a certain demographic that were attempting to buy what I have. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was really the like swaggering, most egocentric observation, I would say, not even realization, observation that bubbled up in myself of, these people want what I have.
Yeah.
And they can't afford it. They have all the money in the world. They can buy a $150,000 biohacking machine, which were sold. Like somebody bought, there's a thing there. I don't want to out them for being too bougie because I actually love the machine, but like, are you guys selling any of these here? Like $150K seems pretty steep. Yeah, somebody bought 3 yesterday.
Wow.
One for him, one for his lady friend who lives somewhere else, and one for his studio or whatever. I was like, holy shit, how do you even, does that go into escrow? Like, do you just swipe a black card for that? Like, I honestly don't even know how I would exchange $500,000 with somebody. What does that even look like?
Right.
And so it was a lot of that level of affluence, really, of people that they've worked and worked and worked and worked, and that's a cup of coffee, like, or at least relatively.
Yeah.
And so it seems odd that I really consistently found myself day after day in the position of, this person's trying to buy what I have, and if I could just sell it to them, I'd be a gazillionaire, but I can't.
Right.
And that's kind of beautiful even on my own terms. It's like, that's cool. I can't undo all this stuff. And then kind of a tertiary realization with a lot of this biohacking stuff is their lives are, like, their lifestyle is in shambles. They need the biohacking just to undo the fact that they're working in a fluorescent lit office all day.
Right.
Like, they need this is not making you superhuman. The superhuman protocol is undoing your workday, not making you into Superman. Like, if you could stop the bleed first, you very well might get into something crazy and beyond that. But most people, I do consults, and I'm convinced they're the best value in coaching or endurance athletics anywhere, period, except maybe my camps, which are also pretty ridiculous.
And they look awesome, by the way.
Dude, they're great. We'll get you out for August for sure.
Perfect.
And the biggest thing I do is I need 2 sessions with you, because we're going to do one, and I'm just going to fire hose you with all of this stuff that you're doing wrong. Somebody books the consult because they think they're going to learn about molecular hydrogen or something, and then I'm like, so can you read in your room if you had to, like, big block print in the middle of the night? It's way too bright then.
Right,
like,
yeah.
People are sleeping in big cities with their windows open. Like, no, they're just bombarded with all these little things that some of them matter, some of them don't, some of them are marginal or trivial, and we have to stack a lot of them. But it's ridiculous. So that was kind of the tertiary realization with all this.
I was so fascinated with that. So I've got a friend and a client, and he was also a podcast guest. His name's Jesse O'Brien, and he has such a refreshing perspective on health and wellness and happiness and all of these things. And he runs a couple of businesses in Austin, Texas, Central Health.
That sounds fitting.
Central Athlete, yeah. And he had a similar narrative of that, so much of his clientele are these affluent, extremely successful people that are basically trying now to buy back their health, buy back their well-being.
Undo the 30 years of self-abuse.
Which has got to be almost impossible.
Yeah.
If possible at all. I mean, it's got to be with a tremendous amount of work. And you can't help but then wonder of what's more valuable, our health and our wellness, or success and money and things like that. Because I guess, I don't know, that's not true. People a lot of times will sacrifice their health and their wellness for the success. but it's the ultra successful and the wealthy that try to reverse it and buy it back. And your observation of like trying to buy what you have resonated with me so much, because one of the things I've been trying to do is figure out that balance of leading a very healthy, happy, fulfilling life and supporting my family. And
that seems like the hardest thing. Really, the middle path is conclusively the hardest here.
It's brutal. Yeah.
I have no idea.
So back up a little bit, because I want to hear, some more of just your approach to really your, life philosophy and things like that. But have you always had this mindset that you've had about kind of your approach to health and wellness, or where did this come from? Were you raised like this?
Yeah, I certainly wasn't raised with it. There wasn't a lot of health and wellness in my. It was in my awareness, but it was always like, hey, you want the book on nutrition? Here's mom's credit card. Go get the book on nutrition. Like, just read it. That's the only thing I'm asking for. Oh, now you need to go eat this certain way. Like, walk across the highway, go to the store, get the stuff, and cook it. I was going to cook dinner anyway. Just make enough for 3. And I was like that, or at least my mother was able to give me that empowerment from a super young age.
And so it really did come from within. This has been something that you've been drawn to and attracted to. For sure. Always.
I have mentorship for the first time in my life. And like, I would include coaches as mentors. I literally have been, and part of it is not having the right people, but part of it is just being a know-it-all asshole. And like, that's fine too. But I have been uncoached, 50-50 because there's no one trying to do what I'm doing.
Right.
And the other 50% being because I'm uncoachable. Like, you can't fill a full cup or an intentionally empty cup for that matter. But I was definitely that kid who, my parents like to assert, it's like, I know how to tie my shoes. It's like, you're 3. You don't know how to tie your shoes. Oh, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, don't tell me what to do or tell me what to do, but don't tell me how to do it.
Right.
That was a big thing. As soon as I had words to describe it, it's like, really very, very young. It's like, if I can get this done for you, I do not want to be in a relationship with someone who's worried about how I got it done.
Right.
And that's not, I don't think I'm a particularly like unethical person. So that's not something where like you have to check in on me. It's like, I'm going to do this in the most bohemian way that seems right for my soul, but it's going to be kind of within the bounds of you'd be proud of how it was done if you asked. But also, like, don't ask.
Yeah.
just trust me or don't. I don't need the like checkup and the micromanagement.
Is that your measurement? Like when you're kind of assessing, when you're in your decision making process of whatever it is, whether it's nutrition or your workout regimen or whatever, how are you arriving at the conclusions that you're arriving to? Is it based on how it makes you feel?
Like figuring out what works?
Yeah. You had just mentioned there. Yeah. I forget your exact words, but to your soul and those things like that. I'm just kind of curious what your thought process is when you're evaluating because one of the things I've struggled with, this is what I'm getting at. One of the things I've struggled with is there is an abundance of information now, especially now that I'm kind of in this.
This is way too much.
Self-help, I don't know what you'd call it, optimized biohacking world or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's like, okay, what do you subscribe to? What do you lean into? What are you kind of like willing to hang your hat on? Because just the other day, I saw a post on Instagram that had some conflicting information about how electrolytes work, and I was like, "Gosh, dang it!" So I just chose to ignore it.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast.
And whether that's a
whole podcast.
Yeah, it was talking about how. Anyway, yeah, it's a whole podcast, so we won't dive into it. But so I'm curious from you, especially because you've been sort of living this lifestyle way before social media was as big as it is, and things like that. How you've decided what works, like how you've decided what to kind of stick with.
Well, I spent the first decade of my adult life thinking that what I was doing was trying to run as fast as I can with the talent given to me in order to reveal the ways that I can get faster.
So that's what started all this, is running faster?
Yeah, that are transmittable to other people. So like if you want to know what the fastest shoes are because you're a busy soccer mom and you're trying to Boston qualify and you have time and money and whatever to get to one race and this is the race and you want to make sure everything goes right. I want to be the person who leverages the fact that I am living this athlete lifestyle full time to say this is the best thing you need. This is how you cycle these supplements. These are the shoes to buy for you. This is the course to go do it at. These are some of the interventions you can do. Like I want to have answers on all those.
Yeah.
I've slowly shifted to it's hard to tell what's age and what is the world shifting under my feet. But I'm really at the point now where I'm trying to save people from the Matrix. I mean, that's really what it is. If I have to question, is this on brand for me? It's like, is this going to save a soul from the Matrix? And if it's not on brand for me anymore. Because I really think that by leaning into someone who's infinitely fast is unfuckwithable. You can't mess with that person.
Right.
Like the power that I have, somebody just said, I forget how she worded it, but it was like I'm pleasing to watch move. Like I'm a very embodied person, like the way that I move and like the balance and like everything is reversible and doubleable. And it's like the way that I move is in this balance that's kind of monastic, really. Like if you've ever been around monks, it's like that there is a certain level of I'm feeling things, engaging things all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I do all the time. Like no shit, that's what it is. But there's a hedonic pleasure that comes from that is impossible to rattle. Like that energy, once you feel that, you're not bothered by taxes. You're not bothered by inflation on your groceries. You're just not. It doesn't matter. And so I'm trying to like bottle and distribute that, that generic that's my entire life.
Yeah.
To just put my soul in the public domain, basically, so that people, if you want to take it, take it. If you want to leave it, leave it. That's 100% your agency. But I think I'm onto something that if people could just touch, if they could just grasp for a few minutes, it would change their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, Maslow, the like hierarchy of needs that has like food on the bottom and like maybe sex right above there and whatever. He had a thing that said he was talking about flow state basically before it had a label. Or at least
flow state before it was a thing.
Yeah. And he said people have 3 or 4 or 5 of these experiences, and they are nourished by them for a lifetime.
Wow.
Whereas earnestly this morning, it's Wednesday, it's a holiday, it's workout Wednesday. I had a mile at 50-mile pace, 2 miles at marathon pace, mile at 50-mile pace, all in a row right there. And at altitude, those are all kind of higher intensities than the paces would indicate. And that's just enough to kind of feel spicy and feel in my power. And I completely forgot where I was. Like I forgot that I was training. Like I forgot there's training buddies behind me and we're going to gather up afterwards and I'm going to have this show later and I'm going to get home and have my protein and I have to hit 5:15 or I'm going to feel like shit about myself. None of that was in existence. Like it was entirely, and I'm on a nootropic stack that I'm now a multiple percentage owner in the company because I'm like, you guys have this figured out. Like this is what the world needs. And I have a bunch of synergistic things that put me into that state. And then because it's so repetitive, it's Wednesday. I've done the same exact workout Wednesday, the same protocol, the same pace work even for this block just because it's minimum effective dose really for 7 of the last 8 weeks. So it's like I am Pavlov's dog where I am triggered by this Wednesday ready. And the supplement stack and all of these things. So I can get to this point where every single Wednesday like clockwork, I forget I'm not running a pace. Like if I do glance at the watch, which I'm such a metronome, I rarely have to. If I glance at the watch and check in for power or something, it's always dead on, and I have a visceral response. I don't sit there and go, oh, well, 306 watts is a little heavy for today. It's just like, oh, well, this is an uphill. It's like, I don't need to have that conversation. I see it. I viscerally acknowledge that it's right or wrong, like looking at a piece of artwork that you like or don't like. Because
you're that in tune with your body. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't need my brain to analyze all these things. And I've been striving for this for so long that it's more than 50% of the time on a Saturday or a Sunday with a workout where I will forget that I have a mileage total goal for the day, for the week, that I'm training for something else. I am so absorbed in the act that I am like selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, these traits of flow state. Like I'm gone.
I'd almost call that being present.
For sure.
Which I think is increasingly rare nowadays anyway. It's a lot of the reason why I've enjoyed podcasting so much. You get to sit and have a true dedicated one-on-one conversation with somebody.
For sure.
And you think about how rare that is now with
time.
Distractions and
even
phones
in the podcast
and emails.
Space.
Yeah.
Everything is so clean. Everything is so, you're quoting yourself from a previous thing that you put together.
And like, how can I get the Instagram,
yeah.
the hook for the Instagram short to come out or whatever it might be.
For sure.
But that's fascinating because you said that most people experience that 3 or 4 times in their life.
Yeah, and I'm getting
weekly at least.
I'm getting 6 of them a month.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And it's these little gems, and you acclimate to it in a good way. You don't build tolerance; it gets better.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the thing that I'm really
Have you heard Rob Dyrdek? Do you follow Rob Dyrdek at all? You would like his stuff. He's brilliant. But he has this thing, you know how people talk about rock bottom? He talks about how he found peak top. And he's got these things, these systems and this life flow figured out to where he never wants to feel less than that great.
Nice. Let's put that in the show notes, and I'll be the first person clicking the link.
Yeah, I will definitely share it out because it is
awesome.
It's a cool perspective on it, and that's kind of where I'm getting at. Is it's like you start to realize how good you could potentially feel.
Yes.
And I'm not the natural athlete that you are. I'm a middle of the pack guy at best. Even on my best day, I'm a middle of the pack guy, but I'm proud of it, and I work hard to get there. But for me, the bigger takeaway has been that how much better I feel. Like there was a long time when I was running marathons, drinking whiskey and eating unhealthy and whatever. And I've cut off as recently as a year ago, my fastest marathon was 4.5 hours. I ran a 3.5 hour marathon this year and, which is nothing.
That's way more fun.
But an hour, I mean,
like
that's
my
crazy.
Subjective response to those splits, the same as my own splits, is like 3:30 sounds like a fun time for a big city, whereas 4:30 sounds like a freaking death march.
Sufferfest.
No one's enjoying a 4:30 marathon.
My first one was 5 hours.
Yeah,
I mean that's Sufferfest, and I think that's what's been cool about it is for me it's translated in running, but the feel has presented itself in life, just everywhere else. I'm feeling more alert and more energy and all of these things.
Yeah, I don't think that has nearly enough lip service paid to it. There was as memeable as it possibly gets and as soundbitey as it possibly gets. It's like there was a Goggins thing floating around that's probably still floating around, and if our phones are listening to us, we're both going to see it now.
We'll get served it, yeah.
But it was like the message was people already know how to be happy. They need to learn how to suffer. And I'm like, I strongly disagree. I think no matter how privileged you are, no matter how happy you are by default, and no matter how gritty you are by default, you do not know how to be happy any more than you know how to suffer. And most people, like by default at least, out of the box, most people I think know how to suffer much more than they know how to be happy.
Yeah.
There's a few specific things that have really made me positive that's the truth. And I really think I think that needs a lot more. Maybe there's some sort of conspiracy behind that, why people do want to talk about embracing the suck and all this suffering thing. I was at the Dharma Center Monday night, and someone asked about like finding peace through suffering or whatever, and how do you get this clarity and what have you. And of course, the Buddhist definition of suffering is a little different than the average person's, like gritty, like you're suffering because you're lifting weights. No, you're not. You're not suffering at all. Like that's totally on your own volition. That's wonderful. That's a celebration of your body.
Yeah.
But if you go into it thinking that, you're going to find it. And the first thing she said in response to this person asking was, well, first thing, you shouldn't go looking for suffering. And everybody, of course, laughs. And I'm like, if she would have said that in a room full of ultra runners, they would have laughed her out of the room, not laughed at it.
Right.
And so that's a really bizarre. I had all kinds of feelings coming up in there just in reaction to that, because that's not so self-apparent, I don't think.
Yeah, how interesting to consider that. Because once you say that, I get it. I mean, I've sort of subscribed to the belief that through suffering we can find happiness, or like I did my 100-miler at the end of March, which was a sufferfest, but it changed me as a person. Like there was a lot of good that came from that. But your point of learning how to be happy, learning how to feel good is so much more powerful. And I tend to agree, now that I'm thinking about it, is so much more challenging for most people. And it's almost like, I don't know, that people have set arbitrary barriers from happiness. Like they're afraid of it almost.
I think they are afraid of it. I think you're afraid of being overwhelmed by happiness more than you're afraid of being overwhelmed by despair.
Yeah.
Because at least if you're overwhelmed by despair, society says, oh, you're depressed, or like, oh, everybody gets overwhelmed, or like, that's the grind. Like there's a lot of different things that are kind of encouraging to that. But if I say like, I am just so blissed out, I want to throw it away, like, which is a pretty standard response, like especially kind of like man to man. There's this idea in Tantra that's like, you're gonna bust as quick as you can possibly You're going to ejaculate as quickly as you possibly can because not only have you been training that your whole life, but also you're afraid of where that will take you. Like, it starts getting good and you throw it away as quick as you possibly can. You're like, I'm terrified. That's the face of God. And you throw it away. Right. Whereas, like, the places you might go in 2 hours, just like on the trail, it's like might be a crazy, profound experience. And if you could opt out of that, you know, if you could take the mushrooms and then 45 minutes in, feel the anxiety coming on before you fully like go places, and you could opt out of it, you'd opt out of it 100% of the time. You would never be bold enough to go for it. You have to commit, and that's kind of the cost of doing business. That's the cost of admission,
right?
Is to double down on
the
that
commitment, and
that's where the grit is spent. The grit is not spent just to get through the step by step left foot, right foot, or whatever venue we're applying this to. And the grit really isn't in not throwing it away.
Right. It's like they say, I've heard the saying that cynics get to be right, optimists get to be rich.
Bingo.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, which one would you rather have? You know, do you want to be right or you want to be happy?
Yeah.
You want to be right or you want to be successful? Or,
I told
or
somebody with race pacing, and I've been on their show a few times, and they do really good coverage in the OCR space. And they're nerds. They're the best to do it. And they had a thing about, you know, going out too fast occasionally for your race day. And I was like, it's not even a matter of a consideration. Like, it's not too fast or too slow. You should go out assuming you're going to have the best day of your life and your body's going to catch you. Even if you're wrong 99 times out of 100, it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, how many times do you have to be right with stock decisions? How many times do you have to be right meeting God? How many times do you have to be right finding a soulmate? Like, how many times do you have to train a perfect dog? It's like all these like raw kind of human things. You only have to be right once. And
then the times you were wrong don't matter anymore.
Yeah, no, and no one's counting them. Not
Right.
even you.
Right.
You in the future won't even be like, it was so hard. You'll see it as a means to an end, and instantly that changes. That's like the realization I had of just how flexible the past was, is realizing that once you realize why you've been doing something, which you might not have even known that there was a why or a greater why or a universal plan or what have you, once you realize that there was some sort of plan, or that once you connect dot 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 70 to 75 to 80, and you start making this beautiful picture, this connect the dots picture, once you see the picture, you don't care about how hard it was to connect the dots.
Right.
You don't even remember it.
Right.
In the truest, deepest sense. I mean, the present moment changes the past drastically. And I think that's where adages like that come from.
That's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. Like, I've been able to, there's been moments in my life that I've looked back on, I've reflected back on and have realized now that they were pivotal. Like, in fact, one of them, kind of interesting, I battled through anxiety for a long time, and I almost didn't show up to my first road marathon. I was having anxiety the night before, and I almost didn't go. And I think back to how different my life would have been had I chosen not to go.
Nice.
And I had all the excuses. I was injured and whatever, but I showed up anyway, and I went. And now I look back, and I'm like, holy cow, that was pivotal. But I've never framed it the way you just did.
Do you think it was a choice, looking back at it?
I think
I tend to look back at things and think it never could have happened any other way.
Yeah, that's
There's
what
no
I'm
way.
saying. It's an interesting
I was
reframe.
the person, or I was the next domino, and it was never going to happen.
Like,
any
it
other
was
way.
meaning that it was meant to be that way.
Meaning that I thought I was making a decision, and the decision was already made.
Yeah.
I don't know who's making the decision. It's certainly not a conscious entity, because I would have found him by now. But it seems
Destiny.
like when you look back, it's like there was only one choice.
Yeah.
There was only one move to make.
And definitely, like, it was the right, whether it was my choice or not, it was the path I'm supposed to be on.
Yeah.
For sure. Because it changed. I mean, I think about that moment and how drastically different my life would have been had I not. I mean, there's 2018, I think, and how drastically different my life would have been.
Yeah.
So it's definitely.
It never could have happened.
Definitely, yeah. It was definitely what was supposed to happen.
You made the only decision that you could have made.
You mentioned earlier, you used the term the Matrix.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your perspective on that. I think the way you worded it was saving someone from someone's soul from the
souls,
Matrix.
Man. I think.
Tell me what that means.
I think of the scene with the guy that's like, it's a stake in the Matrix instead of gruel out of the Matrix, and I'd rather take the stake in the Matrix. I think we're looking down the barrel right now in the next 3 years, 5 years, like certainly less than 10, of do you want to have stake in the Matrix or do you want to have gruel in the real world? And the mission for the foreseen future for myself is to get everybody eating steak in the real world. I think if you then it's not a decision. If your standard of living is a 4 out of 10, you're scratching by, you eat, but it's not great. You have a significant other, but they're just okay. You have a job, but it doesn't fill your soul. You make the food, but it's not like regenerative, restorative, feel good, where you're grateful for it, prayed over food. And I think you could split into any part of life, and anything that's part of your human experience in there. Now, if I can take all those things for myself and for everyone in my life, and at the very least I can remove all the obstacles between them and making it gourmet, if not just make it gourmet on every single aspect of that. If you can have gourmet workouts, gourmet food, gourmet sex, you can have these proper, like, if everything in your life symbolically has the perfect wine pairing gourmet to go with that regeneratively farmed whatever, it's like, now we're talking. These are people, I have no intention of dying without a commune around me. So I have to make sure that people don't want to opt into the Matrix. And when I say the Matrix, think like, I look at my youngest nephew and think, he will never have sex with a human person. There's no way. Like, he'll get bored one day, he'll get frustrated, everyone will be socially awkward, no one has game, he'll throw on the VR headset, and it will be better than anything he could experience in the real world. Boom, like that. And I think the same thing's going to go for everything else that I'm listing here. I just think, sex hits people kind of deep, so catch them. And if I can raise you from a 3 to a 7 out of 10, where your stuff is sustaining your soul, not just going through the motions, and you're losing yourself to these things, you're not someone who's going to opt for a fake version of this. You're not someone who's going to opt for a stake in the Matrix. You already have a stake.
Right.
And so that really is, I see this as a very, very real thing that I wouldn't have, 2 years ago, this wasn't even on my radar. But it's like, you see some of the stuff that we can do with AI. It's like, that's game over, man. That is. It's not that all of us are going to be done doing the human thing, but enough of us are going to be done. You think about your favorite restaurant or your favorite farmer, and you think about going in there. Are they going to survive if 20% of people don't want to purchase their stuff anymore? Are they going to survive if your favorite media outlet is so inundated, if your favorite author is so inundated by AI books, a book a second for a year,
right?
They are going to be so blasted into obscurity on like an Amazon, especially when you can see what book sells, tweak the story, and sell the second one in 30 seconds on AI software. You're not going to have access to these people, and so it really has to be a very direct thing to just make people as bougie as we possibly can, and to remove all the hurdles. Hey, it's not about money. It's not about anything. I wonder, when we talk about feeling so good in your body, I wonder if I couldn't just take someone, plug them into my body, and have them wake up feeling good, which, God willing, I won't wake up feeling good tomorrow. Like, it takes me my full morning routine to feel as good as I want to, but it's hard to tell. I think the average person just caffeinates and lives their life in that state, or worse. And so I really believe that if you could plug in the average person into my nervous system, into my body, and they could feel the feeling that is, like, again, you sound good saying I've fought depression. You don't sound good saying it's actively pleasurable to be in my skin. Right. That's like just not catchy. Right. I don't know why. It's that same thing. It's like grit is just more marketable. It has a better media team than joy and happiness. I don't know who programmed this shit onto us, but it needs to leave. Like, it needs to be gone yesterday.
It's so interesting because that's how I have a tendency sometimes, and I've struggled with it, is I found a certain level of, happiness and joy and feeling good in my life, and I want others to feel like that. And sometimes it makes me come across as, I don't know, salesy or pushy or whatever, but it's genuinely like, no, you don't understand how much better you can feel. The other day I was thinking about it, you think about the average American that drinks alcohol every night, watches TV, gets 4.5 hours of crappy sleep, commutes on the highway, sits in a cubicle for 9 hours, and then does it again. How awful you must feel. Like, physically, emotionally, and all these things. And I understand that some people have situations that, require, like, you've got to make money, you've got family, you got to support. I totally empathize with that stuff. And maybe that's the version of the Matrix that you're sort of talking about. It's like, there's these rich lives that you can live outside of that are so much more powerful and so much more impactful than the paycheck.
Yeah,
or the car. Or,
you just don't know what you don't know. And that's the thing that I think I'm picking up off of you is if people just knew, if you could just snap your fingers and let them know.
And like,
you tell, as an athlete, you tell somebody, hey, just run 30 minutes a day for 30 days. You'll probably have a great run in that time period. And if not, you built an aerobic base and it'll stick with you for months. Great. The average person thinks, yeah, and I might lose a few pounds and this and that. And they have all these like intellectual appraisals of what you're telling them. But if they viscerally felt, yeah, that would feel really good on day 30. Not the satisfaction of checking the box, the subjective, active, mindful moment in your own skin. They would pay whatever the cost was. And I don't think I'm more disciplined than these people at all. I think I know things that they don't know.
Yeah.
If you knew what I knew, you would pay any price for that. If you knew,
you'd wake up early, you would do the thing.
For sure. If you knew that on day 55 of eating the same exact sweet pepper, that sweet pepper would be the most delicious food you've ever eaten, you would go through the first 54 days. Well, the first few days are good, but after that, it's mind-numbing eating the same thing every day. But what happens is your body rebels against that in the best possible way, and suddenly it reacclimates, and you take that bite, and it's the best thing ever. Now, if I could tell you you're going to semen retain for 10 days and you're going to have the best orgasm of your life, you'd be tempted to do that. If I said it was only 24 hours, I know you would do it right now when we left here. Now, if I tell you it's 6 months, ooh, that's going to be a hard sell. And I say, no, I promise you, on my word, it'll be the best. And I'm not. This is not actually what I'm asserting here. But it's like, it'll be the best thing you've ever had in your life. It's like, if you really believed that, you would do it. And it wouldn't even be a challenge. And so there's something to how much can I sacrifice effectively for further, for future Anthony's enjoyment and making sure that future Anthony gets here. I think a lot of people are good at squirreling away things,
delayed gratification,
and they never get it. It's like this, they get stuck in this human loop of like, if I save this, and it's like, and then what? And it's like, if you're not happy in the process, then you don't know that you're going to be able to enjoy the happiness in the future. You kind of have to get reps in, and the reps could be the grit and the discipline and the late hours, but it could also be the joy.
You can also enjoy the reps,
and this kind of serotonergic, like within the bounds of your own skin, pleasure. And so that's a whole thing in and of itself, and that's the part, the interaction between you as a thinking critter. That's why I think, to get back to my point a moment ago, I think if I plugged you into my nervous system, I think you would experience pain. Probably the same exact pain that you experience yourself. Because I really do think at this point in my life, and I've never been all that woo-woo. I went to school for exercise science. Someone was asking me like what the sauna does, because he's been here for a few weeks and he spends every summer up here. And I literally I draw a little muscle fiber on the chalkboard wall and I magnify it, and I go down to the individual myofibril and I magnify it, and I go down to the cell and I magnify it, and I go down to the mitochondria and I magnify it, and I get all the way in there, like electron transport chain and drawing windmills and stuff. Like, I can do that. Like, I can get down on that. It's great. It's fun. It's like mental masturbation for the human monkey mind here, that like I can do things and understand things and look how conclusive it all is. And then it's like, yeah, and then you put it in the real world and it's like all that shit goes out the window immediately. And so that's great. But I am getting softer exponentially by the year. And it's not from the hardest experiences of my life like I thought it would be. It's from the most blissful experiences of my life.
Interesting.
And so you wouldn't think soft things would soften you. Like, that sounds like no shit when you say it like that, but you tend to think that hard things soften you. You have a really rough day, you experience anxiety, you have a lull that you just can't shake, and you develop compassion for everyone that's ever been through that. That's a thing. That's a very effective thing. It's kind of like bad memories are more sticky to a human brain.
Right.
And so there's validity to that. But I think you do imprint, especially if you go looking for them, you imprint on these blissful experiences too. And I think it's the wiring towards those that makes me look for the things that feel good instead of looking for the things that feel bad. And that's why I really think if I could just plug in someone who's in chronic pain into my nervous system the next morning, I think they would wake up they would cry. They'd feel so great. And within, call it an ultradian cycle, maybe 90 minutes, they would have pain again. I think that would follow them into my pain-free nervous system, like that.
Because of their mindset? Because of their perspective?
Yeah,
why do you think?
I mean, perspective sounds so like you could draw a flow chart around it. It's like an energetic thing. It's like your aura. It's like you're bringing in this baggage of this is the way that the world is. And, people know that I'm Mr. Heat. Like, I'm Mr. Heat Shock Proteins. Like, Rhonda Patrick can talk about all the studies she wants. She's great. She's brilliant. like mild celebrity crush for sure. But she's a nerd. Like, she's an academic. So she's 15 years behind people like me. Like, I'm the person doing it. I'm the person inspiring the studies that need to be done down the road. Not even the ones that are done.
Right.
Like, I'm inspiring the stuff they haven't even thought of yet. And it matters to me. Whereas it doesn't, it matters for your funding, or it matters for none of that shit's real. That's all imaginary. That's monopoly money. None of it's real.
How it makes you feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would, to walk the path, this is eating the same sweet pepper every day for 55 days to have day 55. And I don't even know when it'll hit. If I knew when it would hit, it would be even easier.
Then it'd be easier, yeah.
And so I really think the story keeps it going. I also kind of suspect you could flip that as well. I think if I went into somebody's body with chronic pain,
you could feel better.
I think it would be so different to their nervous system that it would snap it out of it, just like psychedelics or other transcendental experiences, that you just have the feeling of oneness. Or, the first few people that got to go into space, whoever it was that had the experience of like every emotion I've ever had, every world war, everything just all happened in this little teardrop out in the middle of nothing. It's like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
If you could have an experience that awe-inspiring and that selfless and that extended through time and space and everything, if you could have that once a week, maybe you'd lose your shit. Like, maybe I'm insane. I'm very open to this idea. I'm not opposed to this whatsoever. Like, with a straight face, yeah. But I don't think I am.
Do you think? So, remind me. I want to come back to the psychedelics and oneness idea. But before that, do you think, when we think about human evolution and the timeline of humanity, what we're living in, the evolution has been expedited so exponentially. I mean, our lifetimes, even, the way
the iPhones
humans live has changed. Yeah. I'll never forget. So the first ultra I ran, and it was really in the ultra distance more than even the marathon distance. The only way I could describe it is that it felt natural, which didn't comprehend to most people. I was in a lot of pain, but it felt real. It felt natural, and I was so attracted to it just because I don't know. I felt like I related to other humans in a different. I don't know how to explain it.
100%.
So I'm curious if you think that some of this disconnect has been that we've gotten away from who we really are, like evolutionary as humans, of these things that. Because there's got to be some science and some reason behind why these things make us feel good. Like, that's got to be in our nature. I would think.
I think that's why I prefer to call a lot of these things masturbation, is that your body thinks it's getting something that it's not.
Right.
It's tickling like these circuits.
False
it's tickling these circuits. Exactly.
Yeah.
You think you killed the elk, when in reality you're eating a Twinkie. And the problem is, downstream of that Twinkie, you're not satiated like the elk would be.
But in the moment, you get the satisfaction that you would have gotten.
Yeah, this little sneeze of a sensation,
right,
that is the real deal. And we're stacking all these things, and they're fake. They're all fake. There's no substance to it. And so it is kind of bizarre that you have to explain that to people.
Yeah.
Because you would think running long distances, virtually 100% of your ancestors, debatably 100% of them, pre-agriculturally, you had to get up and go.
Had to.
Like, whether you're the lion or the gazelle, you better get up and you better run when the sun comes up.
And then like always growing up, I understood that concept that like we used to have to hunt for our food, and that early humans used to literally run down animals until they would wear them out. Like we would out endure them. Until I started running ultras, I didn't comprehend that meant we were literally running ultras.
Yeah.
Like they were probably 100 milers. We probably ran after our food for days on end before we finally wore out.
Or even if it's 20 or 30, you might not catch it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and then what does your nervous system do with that? I mean, I think that kind of circles it back around. Humans are the only animal that we can witness struggling. You don't witness another animal struggling. A dog just does what a dog does because it's what a dog does.
Yeah, they pain mask.
Now and they're rewarded for it within their brains. Like, you can see a dog. You can go out and tell a dog, go play, and run down the road. Like, Winston, my little res dog out here, he's 13, 14 years old and crushing miles like anybody. And he's a science project, so that's neither here nor there. That's for later.
My wife's lab is training for her marathon with her. Just FYI,
nice.
Quick anecdote or
awesome.
aside, but she's.
I can help you guys with some protocols.
Yeah,
for that, for sure.
I would love to pick your brain on that because she's crushing it. They're running like 14, 15 milers every weekend now, and her and the lab are just crushing it together. It's so fun to see. So,
like
anyway.
that dog is wiser than you because it doesn't have the monkey mind telling it what to think. It doesn't have the monkey mind appraising each of these things as they pass. It just knows I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah.
And it looks at you and it says, man, my ancestors knew that you were a god, so here I am. Tell me what to do. Now, you can abdicate that seat. You can say, I'm not a god, we're equals, or whatever you want, whatever the hippie woo-woo stuff is that like feels nice and soft and warm and fuzzy. But it's like that dog is looking at you for stability in the world and to be a god. That was the contract that dog's ancestor, right. Those wolves signed, is you will take care of me, come hell or high water, everything that you do is right. And that dog is receiving a deep, deep-seated just spurt of like a neurochemical cocktail that's like rightness.
Right.
And rightness is another one of those things that could be a corollary to that earlier idea. Is rightness is worth anything. Rightness doesn't care. If you know the why, you can handle almost any how, like Nietzsche. If you know what you're doing, the cost of doing business is a lot less important. You're not laboring over the electric bill here. It just is what it is. If we need an extra light, we're not crunching pennies. We got to do that's to do the thing. We have to do the thing. We have to do this thing, or this all dissolves. And it's like, so you don't question the number of heartbeats you're going to take in your life. You don't count the cost on that and allocate these things. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I read something a while back that was reframing the idea of sacrifice. It's like, it's not a sacrifice. It's you're doing what has to get done for the right thing. It's that whole same kind of idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I have a tickle. Speaking of hunting down our game, do you eat wild meat? Do you eat game meat?
As much as I can.
Yeah.
I don't hunt, which is something that
why not?
I'm waiting for someone to fix that for me. I really, all it would take is one person to be like, you can probably carry 75 plus pounds out of here. And I'll be like, fuck yeah, I can. Let's go. So
you can.
Yeah, 100%.
You just met the guy that can fix that for you.
There we go. It's on.
We'll go hunting.
Plus, I'll eat your nasty bits, man.
Yeah.
You can share air quotes with me and you won't even miss it, dude. You can give me the bones and the hooves and the horns and like, you can give me the shit you'd leave out there, which then makes us carry more.
I did a 24-hour race last September. I think I ran like 68 miles. And then like 5 days later, I went on a muzzleloader mule deer hunt with my two sons.
Nice.
And I was pretty banged up. I was recovering from the ultra. Excuse me. Allergies are kicking my butt. And anyway, I went out to the woods with my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old and an open sight muzzleloader. So the odds of this happening successfully are zero.
Okay.
Like, not going to happen.
Okay.
And we're like a mile and a half in. And anyway, long story short, sure enough, it happened. And I shot a deer, and it was this amazing experience with my two sons and myself. But it was probably maybe the best day of my life because I had just ran an ultra, so I was haggard. I mean, I was beat up. We're in the woods with my sons. We kill this deer. It's this special, like, spiritual moment between the three of us, and we're like excited about it. It's their deer. I'm like celebrating them now. They know where their food's going to come from and whatever. But then the sun's going down. I'm a couple miles from the truck with my two sons, and it was this moment of like, oh gosh, this just got a little bit serious.
Yeah.
Like I'm still pretty banged up. The sun's going down. I've got now a whole deer. My two sons that aren't very helpful. I have to help them even.
Yeah.
And I put the whole deer on my back. I quartered it, and then the back straps and the head and whatever. But I had probably 200 pounds in my backpack, plus all of our stuff. And they held
juice boxes and Cheez-Its and shit, goldfish.
Exactly.
Imagining a 4-year-old.
Exactly. All this stuff. And they held my hands, and we walked that thing out of there. So anyway, you can, and I'll show you. In fact, ultra runners, if you got into it, you could crush the hunting world. If you're willing to just put in some miles and get out there, the skill sets that you've developed from ultra running, you apply that to hunting.
It's on my bucket list to persistence hunt something. So you mentioned that, and this isn't like on record really because it's not solidified, but probably September. I got something in the works. That'll be done right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
Let me know. God, when the fall comes around, we'll get together and we'll go hunt.
Dude, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned psychedelics and oneness, and I have no idea where you stand on that level. I've got an idea of, I guess I do have an idea, an impression kind of. But that seems to be a recurring theme too. For anybody that has experienced psychedelics, there's this kind of overwhelming perception of connectivity and oneness and things like that. And I'm curious your perspective on this as it relates to this whole human evolution, avoiding the matrix, idea? Like, are we all connected, do you think? I mean, what do you think is kind of, where does that come from? And I'm just curious, from your mind and your perspective.
Yeah, I think I can't convince myself that there's an entity that's conspiring for or against us. So a devil or God character, I can't seem to wrap my mind around it. And that's, I don't really lean into my intellectual mind all that much anyway. So maybe that's the issue, but it just doesn't. I just haven't experienced it. Just haven't seen it. I'm open to the idea, and so I think it's more of like a thermodynamics spirituality of, to quote one of my favorites, Chuck Palahniuk, we're all rotting in the same compost pile. To like bring it back down to human level again for a second here. It's like, that's the esoteric part. That's the spiritual part. That's the transcendental part. That's the best part of you, is that you are not a snowflake. You're rotting in the same compost pile. And that there's a level of oneness that is beautiful in that, not nihilistic.
Right.
Now, I don't know the percentage. I don't know if it's 1 or if it's 99% of the population that could really appreciate that and feel like that brings them peace. But I would hope that it brings somebody something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like the idea of hedonic calendaring, and I want to say was it Stephen Kotler?
Define that for me. I'm not familiar with that.
So you could get to these places through meditation or food, or, I mean, really this is circling it right back in. We have a nice theme going on here of, what you were describing with running all that long. I don't have to explain to you why a good meal is good.
It just is.
You just get it. Like, it has its own intrinsic value, and everything that doesn't have value, everything that I have to explain to a 6-year-old why it would be a good thing is probably shit. It's probably not a good thing. You've convinced yourself that it's this thing, and it's plugging into some software that you have and tricking you into thinking that you have it now, and you don't. And at some point, you're going to pay the piper for that. You're accruing this what I'm okay calling a spiritual debt, right? Like that's where the soul exists to me, is in your credit score with yourself as a living, breathing, whatever, sweating, shitting human critter. It's like that's where your spirit exists to the extent that you have one. And so I think I'm going to lose myself in all this. It's been a long day. These anything that we can do, this hedonic calendaring, is this idea that there's certain things I can do every hour. You see a Zen monastery that the clock or has some tone to it, and they all take a mindful moment. You can do that every hour. That's not going to disrupt your day. That's going to shoot. You might get all the way. You might achieve enlightenment. Like Thich Nhat Hanh saying, doing dishes will take you all the way. Like, it'll take you all the way to enlightenment. Like, that's, doing the dishes. That's something you can do every day. Doing ayahuasca out, or doing psychedelic cactus, like, because we're in the American Southwest here. It's like taking a mescaline containing cactus somewhere out here in the Southwest and seeing the sunset out in the desert. That's probably something you could do once a year. If you're really doing it right and you're really working with a shaman, you're crying and shit, you don't want to do that more often than that. Like, if you're doing it right, you don't want to. Whereas, a trendy thing with like microdosing, you might want to microdose once a week or once every 3 days even. You have a microdose day where you take a tiny amount of psychedelics. You have an afterglow day where you still kind of feel like, wow, yesterday was great. It's a great day to have a great day. It's a great day to be a human body. And then you have a sober day because you better in there no matter what you're dealing with. And then you repeat the cycles. Like, that's something you could do 1.5 times a week. And so this idea of hedonic calendaring of how
frequency,
how consistently can I enjoy something without it detracting from the joy that I get? And that's it's a very hedonic way to look at hedonic calendaring, is if I have my first slice of chocolate cake or my first slice of cheesecake, which is probably more my preference, is going to be so good. The 10th slice in the same meal is not going to be nearly as good. And at a certain point, you're eating to assuage the already crashing, like, I don't feel so good. And that's kind of how the brain's wired anyway. It's like this little spurt of dopamine, and one hits that says this is pleasurable and one hits that says this is painful, and the pleasure desensitizes and the pain amplifies. And so you slowly are, you're smoking the cigarette to not have the craving for the cigarette, not because the cigarette feels good. It doesn't
feel good anymore.
So it's like, and I'm a huge advocate for nicotine. It's like, if I take a knick-knack, which is the cleanest nicotine thing on the market, everybody's talking about like, oh, nicotine might not be that bad for you. No one is talking about, well, yeah, you're literally putting mesoplastics, as I like calling them, meaning somewhere between large plastics and small plastics.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't microplastics, it's visible. Like, you're putting visible plastic chunks in your beak and leaving it there for an hour. And then you have to, I'm out in the wilderness doing this stuff, so it's like, then I have to dispose of this little pouch somewhere, and it's a pain in the ass. So like, I've been using Knick Knack. I can take a 3 milligram Knick Knack once a week or twice a week, and it will hit me so hard every single time. It's great. It would have been a good idea for today. Like, verbal fluency is better, perks me up a little bit. It doesn't last so long that I can't take a nap after the workout or run it out of my system. It just puts me into a little bit better of a state. And then I think there's probably neuroplasticity value in just having different substances and doing the same thing.
Right.
Like, I can run on different surfaces, and that'll stimulate some plasticity. I can work out in the gym in a different way, and that'll be wake some neurons up that weren't awake. Or, since I'm a dedicated athlete and I need to be able to run real fast for 5 to 6 hours.
Run
and then
real
sometimes,
fast and real far.
Yeah. And sometimes a little longer, a little shorter, whatever it is. It behooves me to have the same exact thing, but have a different brain to engage with those things with.
Interesting.
And so there's kind of a hedonic calendaring thing that slips pretty smoothly into like biohacking protocols of, well, how much can I do? If I sauna every day, is it better or worse? If I cold plunge every day, is it better or worse? Not just what gives me the most bang for my buck or like, increases my HRV to feel good. It's like, forget all that noise. Like, just the subjective experience into it and lean into that. I think that would get you pretty far.
It's almost, because I'm familiar with the concept of diminishing returns.
Yes.
It's that and then some. It's like, I don't know, I'm making sure I'm understanding. Scheduling things out or putting intentional parameters around frequency or amount or whatever.
It's probably the best use for a human brain.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would love to be on record saying this is what a human brain is for, and it's for hedonic calendaring. It's
because you're smart enough to know I shouldn't have that today, but I should have it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you can be your own adult, which sounds like a pain in the ass to be my own adult. But if I can be my own adult 5% of the time,
that is a pain in the ass, by the way.
If I can make it 5% of the time and map it all out, that means I can be my own child 95% of the time. And I can just be this little kid playing in the dirt making mud pies.
Are you familiar with the discipline equals freedom concept?
Yeah.
Jocko Willink, he says discipline equals freedom. And on the surface level, you think that's contradicting. Discipline does not equal freedom. Discipline is a cage. Mm-hmm. But then I've thought about it in big picture ways about my discipline in my physical fitness gives me freedom in my physical fitness. Discipline financially gives me freedom financially. That same thing could be applied here.
And it brings you the experience of freedom.
And then it lets you have the freedom because you're disciplined when you can't. That's fascinating. Why do you think most people struggle with that though? Because, you look at most people's relationship with alcohol, for example, and maybe the proper calendar for that is never. 0, never. I don't know.
I think it depends on the person. Like my brain, and I know this because like we go hard in the ultra running space, right? We can go out, we can run, we can hunt, we can ruck, we can carry stuff, we can go do a Spartan Ultra, we can take heavy nootropic doses, we can abuse caffeine, we can do a lot of simple sugars. On Monday, I can do no pills, no powders, no supplements. I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm 100% that person who could just have a weekend full of strippers and blow and then go right back into work on Monday, and you would never know. Like, and I don't know how sustainably I could do that, and I'm 32, so maybe I'll age out of it, but I'm positive, despite the fact that's never been part of my life, it's like, I think some people rebound harder, and some people rebound softer to these things, and there's always the angle of the potential for it to be a hormetic stressor. There's always the angle of, even if this is poison, even if this is, like, a great example of this is sulforaphane. Like, I'm on a supplement right now called Brock Elite. And so that's just this really refined. I grew broccoli sprouts forever for the same reason. I heat treated them Rhonda Patrick style, like, got it all right, and would just binge on these things. Such a pain in the ass. Now, having a supplement that I trust, huge step forward. Now, the carnivore community looks at that and says, why would you consume that? That's poison. And the like herbalist community says, that's a really great idea, that makes sense. And I'm like, you're both right. You're 100% both right. This is trying to kill me, but my body works in a way such that I have genes that are activated from this. I have a robust response, and not only will I get back to neutral, I will get ahead of neutral for having taken this. And so that's kind of the jackpot for a supplement, right? Is something that can make training easier, but also amplify the effect of your training. And that's what you see in some of the studies. Not only are you not outsourcing the oxidative stress, you're actually getting more oxidative stress. It's kind of like a sauna. It's not alleviating stress. It's putting more stress on you, but your body rebounds even harder, so that instead of being, not only are you not at a -5, you're not even at a 0 again. You're at a +1 from adding, piling it on.
Interesting.
It's like, that's my own bias because my body's always rebounded with that. Everyone has a different tolerance for these things. So I would imagine there's plenty of people who their body sees alcohol as a hormetic stressor and they feel great the next day.
Yeah.
Now, I think in an era of democratizing science where everyone can throw an Oura ring on, or really, fuck Oura ring. Like, they're charging people for their data. Charge me what you have to charge me for the ring. Do not charge me for data.
Right.
So, like, Ultra Human ring, no subscription, equal accuracy, a cooler team, Ultra Human all the way, free endorsement. And in the world where all this stuff is democratized and you have access to your own data, a lot of people are opting out of drinking, and that's rippling out to everyone else. It's like, I can have one beer before dinner, or, I'm not a beer drinker, but like I can have one glass of wine before dinner or with an appetizer, with an early dinner, and you will not be able to see that in my sleep. And I'm always training heavy, so that probably has something to do with it. It's a little quicker in there. If I have a drink after dinner, you will see that in my sleep, no matter what I do, no matter what supplements I take, no matter what. So it's like, that's a shitty deal. And I've given people a lot of trouble publicly about, like, you take drugs like a child. It's like, that's what I mean. Don't let the government tell you what drugs you can put in your body. Right. Like, you're the test kit. Like,
you decide.
We're the pioneers here. We don't even know what some of these chemicals might do to a body short term or long term. So let's find out. I think, you said things are advancing so exponentially. I think this is the greatest time to be a human right now. Like, right this year, probably. Maybe next year. It's like, it's right now. Because Planet of the Apes style, you maniacs, you blew it up. That's coming any day now, and it's not going to be sexy and flashy. It's going to be subtle. Just no one's outside. Boom. Everyone's in like the VR metaverse or something.
Well, and that's what's interesting. You talk about, because I agree wholeheartedly. This is the best time to be a human.
We have all these toys and we haven't blown it up yet. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. What's concerning is that the gap's widening. Like, I feel like, generally speaking, we are simultaneously the healthiest we've ever been and the least. Like different groups of, like, we've got all this great information and,
Yeah, we're the most health conscious we've ever been because we have to be.
Right.
That's the give and take.
And then there are people, though, that are there's a group of humans that are the least healthy that humans have ever been also. Like, we're at this moment of kind of, a dividing thing. I'm curious about supplements. What supplements do you take? What are you, tell me about your diet. Tell me about your approach to nutrition. And I'm especially interested in, I know that you eat organ meat and things like that, but I'm curious from a supplement perspective, what you have found is actually impactful and worthwhile, and other stuff that maybe isn't worth the hype.
Well, everything is periodized. Like, my entire life is periodized. If it's a base phase, meaning I'm running a lot of easy miles, I'm not doing fast work, I'm far away from race day, I never get out of shape, so I'm never really like establishing fitness. I'm always in shape.
Always shape, yeah.
Yeah. And so the supplements will change based on if I'm there or if race season is on. Once I break the seal and start racing, get really fit, getting ready for an A race. So all of this will be periodized.
Is Leadville your A race?
If I get in this weekend, the Leadville 100 is my A race.
You're not in Leadville?
I'm not actually in the 100 right now. So I'm training for the 100. I will pivot if I need to, but I want to say, like, probably top 15, maybe top 10, conclusively top 5 at the marathon. We'll get a coin into the 100, and then I'm set. Like, I don't think I've been 15th or 12th or whatever in a race since I ran the Boston Marathon, where I was like 50th. Like, if I finish and I'm not broken and I don't fall off the side of the mountain or get lost or something, it's like I should get my coin.
Cool.
But technically, it's not in there yet.
You're already in there.
Yeah.
So sorry for the off track.
Oh, definitely. So yeah, that's the goal race. So August 17th, Leadville 100. I don't, like, my dad asked me, well, how you feeling for Leadville? I'm like, if you have an erection 2 weeks before you're having sex, that's not a bad sign, but that's not a good sign. Like, it's certainly better than not, I guess, but it's like, you don't really need to be ready then. And so with Leadville 50 days away or something, that's a whole training block the way that I run it. So, like, right now I'm fat adapting for the Leadville 100, meaning I have 20-ish grams of net carb a day right now. So it's just like mayonnaise and eggs and grass-fed butter and steak. And I've slanted more closely carnivore than I've ever had in my life for this last block. And I think part of it is I'm on a lot of very bespoke supplements that let me kind of tickle those genes without having to eat the food. Now, if that's eroding part of my soul, like I outlined earlier, we'll find out if I ever end up paying the piper for that.
Right.
But it's like, I still think spices and seasoning and all these things that are plants that don't want to be eaten, I think eating those is probably a good idea. And having all that in a minimum effective dose. So yeah, I'm super, super low carb. The first type of carbs that I add will be like sweet potatoes and things that go really far. You know, you do a little confit egg in there, bake the sweet potato, mash it out into the cast iron, sear it on one side with some butter, put some egg yolks on top, pop them over top, and just the yolk on there. Oh, I mean, that's the best way to spend 30 grams of carb ever. And so early season, that'll be backloaded, where like I'll have the hard workout on a Wednesday or a Saturday or whatever with 20 grams of carb for the previous 4, 5, 6, 7 plus days. And then I'll have carbs afterwards. That'll help me sleep. That'll help the recovery down. The next day will feel a little better. As I shift further and further closer to the A race, those carbs will come heftier, more frequently, until I'm just like crushing carbs. I mean, I've had VO2 data done showing you're still a freak. You're still a fat burner. You're still putting up data that a grad student would come in and be like, what's wrong with the machine? And I was on 350 grams of carb a day.
Wow.
As a 130-pound marathoner.
Right.
Like, that's incredible. And like truly unbelievable, like incredible, like in the true sense of the word. And so that's what makes me say, one more thing that makes me say athletes are, dude, we're a decade ahead of you guys. Like the whole rest of the world, at least athletes without talent. Now, talented athletes sometimes just do incredible things because it's what they're meant to do. They're just sled dogs. And so everything
Are you an athlete without talent?
I don't have a whole lot of talent.
Really?
Yeah. I think if you did the things that I do for like 6 months, you would be shocked at the performances you would put up.
Wow.
And if you took someone who has identifiable raw talent as a kid and had them do what I've done for the last decade,
they'd be exceptional.
People like me would be 100% obsolete.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be able to. No one would care. If you don't stand for winning first, no one cares about your hippie woo-woo taking mushrooms and taking your clothes off in the woods. Like, no one cares about that unless you're also winning races.
Right. Yeah.
And so it would only take so many talented people doing it right, but it's not
like
that they're lazy.
That are like, in terms of genetics, I'm below, like way below. And,
maybe.
We can work our way to the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think gene activation's a thing. And I think there's so many different ways to be talented. And there's so many different interventions that tickle those ways.
So I'm curious then. Would you say that, assuming you're an untalented athlete, which
I'm durable,
could be debated,
durable.
But fair enough.
So you can get fast with durability if you're smart.
What are your talents? Because you got to have some talents. Something that you've been born with, God-given talent.
This is a good question coming off the Spartan race because I did 0 pull-ups almost. I did 0 kinesthetic anything. Like I came into it like it was a road marathon. I really couldn't have tweaked my training all that differently had there not been obstacles. And it was like bushwhacking chest height on the first lap. We had a 60-pound sandbag that was almost 1.25 miles long with 2 barbed wire crawls in it and a sled pole done both ways, one on a rope and then one on a chain, pulling the sled. That was like, I mean, somebody said it was like 130 pounds or something. Like, I didn't even notice. I was in the zone. I was racing. Like, I didn't even notice that it was my body weight in this thing. And you're in sand with cacti and stuff. It's not like being in a gym and pushing a sled.
Right.
And like that sort of durability, that 5 to 7 maybe hours, 5 to 6 hours with strength obstacles and moderately fast running.
Talent.
That's talent. That's what makes things like the Spartan Ultra feel so good. The people that can run, that can normalize, I mean, putting it in road marathon terms, like somewhere like 6:15 miles. On the trail, that might be an 8:15 mile if you're uphill and it's 85 degrees and you're at 7,000 feet. But, that might be a 4:45 if you're coming down the same hill.
Right.
So, somewhere around that 10 miles per hour-ish effort, the people who are as comfortable as I am at that level for hours and hours, like both metabolically, mechanically, that sort of physicality to it. The people that can do that can't do a dozen pull-ups. I can do a dozen pull-ups.
Yeah.
The people who can do 30 pull-ups, they can't run that fast. They can do 7:15 effort all day. If you go down to 6:15 or 5:45, it's rarefied air. There's no one. And so if you look at you put all these lines out here of like, here's where I'm good, here's where I'm weak, and you map all this stuff up and make a nice spider web and then look for like, where are you a freak? It's that 5-hour-ish range. I don't need anything. I could do it on 0 water, 0 calories, 0 anything. I can do a 1.25 mile sandbag carry with half my body weight on me. And there's so few people on the planet that I think even could get that good, having traveled around and trained with incredible athletes that can trounce me in all these different venues. Putting it all together for something like that that's God-given talent. And then it's refined. So now not only can I do it, but I can do it without any strain on my body.
So are you going to pursue that more?
There's no money in it. There's no support. Spartan is like heavily, I mean, it's not corrupt because they're not, I don't think they're smart enough to be corrupt. Corrupt would be a step up. Like they're just in shambles. Like they're just all over the place. We're going to pay athletes. We're not going to pay athletes. We're going to do this race. Well, this is the North American champs. What makes it the North American champs? I don't know. We just needed a title for it. No one was buying tickets for it. Oh, telling the average participants, hey, you get to share the course with the best athletes in the world. It's like, I'm probably the best athlete in the world in that, and I know I'm not going to be there, and I can tell you why. So it's like, no, like that you can't sell us out, and then who's going to say no to that? People that are participating want to hear you're more badass than any of your friends. This is so hardcore of you, and then the athletes who are like, yeah, maybe I am the best in the world. It's like no one's going to openly be like, actually, we're not that good.
No,
there's a dozen people that should have beat me today. All they needed to do was be motivated to do it. Yeah, and so. Because Spartan owns everything. They own OCR World Champs. They own Spartan. They own Mutter. They own everything, and it's all.
Spartan owns Mutter.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
And it's all the same organization. And I've been holding my breath, waiting for one of my sponsors to say, "Hey, we really liked that. We care about this. Let's make this happen. Let's do this part time or full time." And I'd be in. It would be a blast.
Yeah, but you need some. Obviously, you got to pay your bills too.
Yeah. And I'm kind of transcending that right now. Like in the last 60 days even of like, I don't need to, I could never race again. I mean, I really could. I could never race again. It's just I have unfinished business places, which is kind of a really cool place to be as a 30-something-year-old is to be at that point where I've built this life where I had to do what I wanted to do and I wanted to do what I had to do. Why am I going to
say that again?
I built my whole life to where I have to do what I want to do and I want to do what I have to do. And I've built this and put this all together now, which is a great place to be. Because not only do I want to do this, so I'm going to have more joy than you, but I have to do this. So if it gets dark, I'm going to keep right the fuck on going. It's like that was kind of the perfect scenario, and I didn't trust myself if I didn't need to do it. Like when I won my 100K national championship, my electric was off at home. That's someone who is standing on the podium, and they're like, cool, we'll mail you your checks. No, you won't.
Like,
you will give me that check right now. And in 3 days when I'm home, my fridge will be back on. That's what's going to happen.
Wow.
It's like, that's the level of like, all your eggs are in this basket. And if you fall in the basket and crush it, whatever. That's what credit's for. Like the modern world, this is all a game. But I am not going to let myself consider that. When it's on the start line, there's one deer and you're going to catch it and feed your family, or I'm going to catch it. And it's like, sorry, dude, you're going to have to work a job.
Right.
I'm catching this fucking deer. And
right.
I'm feeding my fur child and my lady friend and my training buddies. It's like, that's that. Done, dude. Like scarcity mindset.
Right.
Now, the second we get out of that, it's like, dude, and we can collab post and we can both make more than the prize money. Fuck yeah.
Right.
But that's once we take the bibs off. Once we put the bibs on, we are enacting something that is primal and someone's head's going to get crushed with a rock.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what's important. You can quit at any time. You can crew me. I'll quit. If it goes wrong, I might drop out, crew you, help you do something. Because in the end of the day, like, we're pack members.
Right.
You know, we're wolves. We're rough and tumble to make sure we're up to snuff. But in the end of the day, I still need you. I need you to see God out there, especially even more if I'm not.
Right.
If I fall up short, I need you more than ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you approach every race like that? Like, is every race, because just at your level, I mean, every race is a race. Are you ever running for fun? Like running to?
It's mostly running for fun.
Yeah.
I'm fast
Silverton,
enough now that
you're running Silverton next weekend.
Yeah, Alpine.
Right? Yeah, I'm running that too, by the way.
Nice.
So
that's
you'll
the
finish
most beautiful loop.
3 hours before me probably, but
I'll break 4 for sure.
Geez, if I can be in the 6s, I'd be happy.
Okay.
Of course, I don't know.
2 hours.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, I still have these moments where I think like, hey, maybe I could do it in 5 hours.
I mean, I would love to just sandbag the first 21. If I was a little faster, if I was in road shape right now.
And then
sandbag the first 21, mellow, have a snack, hydrate a little bit, and then see a 49-minute last 10 miles. Because it's like 300 feet of loss a mile for the last 10 miles.
Yeah, it's almost
and it gets
too
less and less
steep
technical as you go, and perfect grade by the end. And yeah, I mean, when 9,000 feet feels like rich, dense air, though, it's pretty serious.
Right, yeah.
So,
I'm stoked about that, but I'm just, I just think it's cool. It's very interesting. It's something that, like, I'll toe the line there, and I'll know that I'm just running for me. It's a whole different world for me than like racing. Racing those races. So I just think it's neat. I admire it.
Out of respect for the people that I'm running with, it's always nice when you can properly race.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time, going hard is in conflict with just finishing, and just finishing is in conflict with going hard. So you kind of have to know what you're coming in for as a run of the mill person. If you're soaring too close to the sun, you're not going to walk it in. You're going to be dead.
Right.
You're going to be beached on the side of the trail.
Right.
That's just going to be that. And you're going to have the wrong shoes, and your heels are going to blister because you weren't supposed to be walking today. It's like something like that is going to happen and go sideways. But out of respect for the people that I'm racing, I'd like to say it's worth head-to-head racing. But usually when I'm racing head-to-head, it's because it's a culture exchange.
Yeah.
Like, I want to run with skinny Northeast African marathoners that have limited English, because I don't need language. Like, what we're doing, like,
speaks for itself.
We're making love out here.
Yeah.
Like, we are exchanging raw energy and culture on a level that the average person, I think that's the 3 to 5 experiences that make you through your whole life.
Right.
And so that definitely takes precedence.
What a great way to describe that. And that you need the competition too. That
Big
elevates
time.
the experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, if you just left everyone in the dust, that wouldn't be that fun.
And there's a lot of that.
3 or 4
there's a lot of that. So knowing what the intent is, because I have to travel typically. If I want competition, I have to travel somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if I want competition in what I'm the best at, I'd have to travel abroad.
Right.
Like properly abroad, like not just Canada.
Right.
And so that's an odd spot to be in. It's that, like, that same 100K national champs that I won. It felt so right that it was 20 5K laps. 20 laps on a 5K course with a 180-degree turn on it in a park that was chosen last minute because they lost their venue permitting or whatever it was for the structure they had at the start-finish line, and it was going to be 5 degrees Fahrenheit or -5 with the wind chill or whatever it was. And they're like, we had to change, like, race week. Here we are. I was like, man, we put the Viking braids in and like got weird and leaned into that, because it's like, in the end of the day, I'm not here because it's pretty. I'm in Durango because it's pretty. If I wanted a pretty, peaceful run to go commune with something larger than me, I'd be at home with my sauna, with Junction Creek to get in, with 40 degrees or whatever, with my dog, with my training buddies. That's where I would be.
Yeah.
And so once you really put that on the table, of this is not why I'm here to do it. It's like, okay, why am I here to do it? It's like, I'm here because I'm the current 50-mile national champ. That dude's the current 50K national champ, and that dude's the current 100K champ.
And we're gonna go
one of us gets to cross the finish
Love
line
that.
first. It's like, knowing what you're coming into it for is awesome. Whereas there is a role for training races. If I know my critical velocity, to get like nerdy in there, or my critical power, like using a stride foot pod, huge advocate for them. It'll calculate critical power just based on your run-of-the-mill training.
Huh.
And it'll tell you exactly. And it's so accurate. It's as accurate as, like, my coach's eye, which is particularly accurate.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you, okay, 300 watts is sustainable for you for an hour, or 320 watts, or whatever it may be. And it'll even calculate altitude versus sea level. And it'll tell you, maintain this. And that's true uphill, downhill, flat, trail, whatever.
Wow. Unless
it's really technical trail, then, like, you get into different things. Like, we're just talking about output, like you went on a bike.
Right.
And so there's times where I'm just trying to harvest data. I hope there's someone there running nice, even, flat, responsible splits that happens to be at my speed, so I can just stare at their backside and get through mentally, like, the ides of it.
It's like when you run a road race and there's a pacer.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just going to stick with that guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super confidence inspiring. But then it's, the second they drop from, if they split a quarter mile off of the power that I want, it's like, you're gone. Or if they prance away, it's like, that's not where I am right now.
Right.
And so that'd
be the difference
racing.
between a race and a training race.
Yeah. Like the Leadville 100. The Leadville 100, the guy that won the last 2 years is coming back, presumably to chase the course record. A guy that won, whenever that was, I guess the previous year, than that other dude, he's coming back. There's a real hungry dude that I know fairly well that in second for most of the day and then crashed and burned. He gave up his whole life, tattooed the Leadville start-finish line on his hand. Reed, you're the man. And it's like there's guys like this that he moved his whole life to Leadville. Like he is as all in as he possibly can be. It's like that's
how
what I
cool
want.
Is that?
So that is going to be a race. Like,
yeah,
that's the best circumstances to race under, because it's like there will be someone off the back that's trying to reel us all in. There will be someone off the front, maybe me, that would be on brand, that's just like hoping they hold on to it and get out of sight. And that's the thing. I mean, everybody hates life at mile 80.
Oh yeah.
So if you burn that bridge, who cares? Like, oh gee, I'll run 7:15s instead of 6:45s. It's like, who cares? Like,
right.
You're not going to catch me, dude. I'm 2 hours ahead of you or something, and you can't see me.
Yeah. I saw a YouTube video recently, relevant but different. It was speed skating in the Olympics, and it was the longer distance speed skate thing. And I guess the way that the strategy is, I'm not familiar with the sport at all, but they kind of stay together in a group around, and somebody kind of sets the pace. And then it slowly gets faster as they get closer to the end, and then there's sort of a sprint to the finish.
Okay.
And it's this, whatever. It's a 2 mile.
I mean, drafting's got to be huge.
Yeah. Well, this race started, and this woman sprinted right out the gate.
Fuck yeah.
And lapped everyone. And then got in the back and just stayed with it and won by a mile. I was like, how fascinating to think about the courage to have to say, I'm going to sprint right out the gate because no one else will.
Yeah.
And if I do, then I'll get back with the pack. And she won. She got first place gold. It was a really fascinating. Yeah. I was fascinated with it athletically, but also psychologically.
For sure.
Because what would happen if everyone tried to sprint right out the gate?
Yeah.
It would change the whole sport.
For sure.
And I'm not familiar with that sport, but man, it was cool to see. It was just fascinating because everyone else did what they've always done.
Yep.
Kept the pace until she finally lapped.
Nerds. You're never going to meet God like that.
And then, so part of me admires that, like, send it mentality. Because to your point, we're all going to be struggling it. I'm death marching at mile 80. I'm at a 15-minute mile at mile 80 with my poles just fighting for my life.
If the muse takes me, I'm gone. I'm not counting if I have a watch on, it'll be displaying power data and either time of day or total elapsed time, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's a real good chance. I pride myself on not wearing a watch when it matters the most, and so I can lock in on a road race. That's fun. That's great. I like the meticulousness of a watch, and I also like, to bring it back with like critical power. If I know that 305 is doable, like God might be at 308. Or crashing and burn and almost walking might be a 308.
I did get a glimpse of that. So when I set my PR on my road marathon, I got to the half marathon mark, and on my Instagram story, I even told everyone, I was like, well, I'm going way faster than I was supposed to.
Nice.
This is going to be epic. One of two ways. I'm either going to epically PR, and finish with an hour faster than my previous PR, or I'm going to epically blow up and like whatever. Like, we'll see how it goes. And I was having fun, man. I was running, and I did a poll on my Instagram story of like, what's it going to be, epic PR or epic blow up, whatever. And it was wild to see. And part of that was just to your point of like, I don't know, this another level of feeling alive and feeling well and whatever is, I sustained it. And who would have thought that I was capable of that? But I was, and just did it. And for me, it was huge. For people like you, I was slow-mo, turtle in the background.
No, fast is entirely relative.
It was so cool. And that's where, this whole conversation has just been so fun for me, because no matter what, if we're, someone like you, this elite, fast, far, kind of all of these things, someone like me that's worked my tail off for 10 years to be a mediocre middle of the pack guy, but feels good and am happy about it, to the guy that's listening, that wants to start over tomorrow and, get on the right trajectory, we all get to. And that's what's so cool. So I think probably my final question for you would be to that guy, somebody who's listening right now that says, I want to lean into happiness. We talked about how that's the harder thing to do than leaning into the struggle and the grit and whatever. What would be your advice? What's step one? How can people start on these journeys to start being the best versions of themselves, feeling the best? Because you've got decades worth of stacked experience, and compounding is now in your favor, and all of these great things. What's your kind of overall message and advice to people that want to start on this path?
My impulse is to say I have no fucking idea.
Which is fair.
I think I do. We know the next step to take, and we want to know what the whole picture looks like before we take that next step. We want to know where it's leading. We want to know how long it's going to last. We want to know what the price of admission is. I think if you know what the next step is, you should just take it.
Take it. I love
just
that.
place that next brick perfectly and don't worry about what you're building. If you know where the next brick goes, just place the next brick. Because by the time that you get to third brick, 5 bricks down the path, you'll be a different person. And you'll have more of it assembled in front of you. So it will make more sense as you go. I don't believe that there's steps that you can take that are forward and backward. I think these are just your steps to take. And people want to, they really do. I think they desire to have this level of intelligence that lets them be like crusty and dismissive. And we put this sort of intelligence. Pessimism sounds like intelligence. Pessimism always sounds like intelligence. And if you just know what the next step is, and I believe everybody does. I believe the average person, if we went to the bar next door, someone in there knows exactly what the next step is. And if they wrote that down on it and folded it in and they were too drunk to remember and mailed it to themselves and didn't open it until they took I'll just say, hey, when you change your life, open this. It'd be the right step.
Yeah.
And that is like, I don't like the idea that that's preordained. But like it is, like I'm grappling with the semantics of the label that we're assigning to it. I think that next step is what it is, and and the part of you that knows that is the part of you that's wise. The part of you that knows that is the sled dog pulling on that tether or whatever sled dogs call them, just because it's the right thing to do. It's the alignment. It's the same experience you had with running so long. It's not comfort or discomfort. It's not joy. It's not. I mean, it's lightness. Like there is a joy that comes in there, but it's alignment. It's a sense of rightness, and that supersedes all of the conversation about pleasure and grit and joy and all this stuff. The feeling of rightness is worth any price that you have to pay, and I think people know the next step.
And then take it.
Love it.
Anthony, thank you so much for so many things. One, thank you for giving me some of your time today, because I know how valuable that is. Thank you for the message that you're spreading. Thank you for the community that you're building. Thank you for, leading by example and for empowering people and saving some people from the Matrix and all of these great things. I have a gift for you. So these are my Inspire by Example shirts, because you really are inspiring.
It looks acceptably small.
We'll find out if it's the right size after this or not. But because you really are inspiring just by living the life you're living and by leading by example. And I just want you to know how important that is, because it matters and people are listening and it's impacting people, and you are so fun to watch. You're so fun to chase, at races and things like that. But even beyond running and, fitness and all of that stuff, I just want you to know how much I appreciate the fact that you're inspiring by example. So thank you so much on many levels.
Thanks, man. Yeah, let's make sure we put a link in our description somewhere or show notes so people know where they can show up to the next camp and the next event, because anybody that's intrigued by any of this, you can literally just show up on my porch for a morning routine.
And he means
if you need a place to stay, I've given out my address on podcasts before. Like if you need a place to stay, just show up at 8:15 in the morning. You get in the cold, you get in the sauna, and you can stay with me as really functionally as long as you're taking it seriously.
It's so cool. And I want everyone to know he means that. Like that's sincere. So we definitely will, because I want people to get in touch with you. So thank you so much.
Cool, man.
Really appreciate it.